Hi, everybody. On the podcast today, we're going to lean into a question that, maybe you've had to ask yourself before. On This is Manitoba, we are considering today the declining fertility rate in this country, and we're looking at that through a Manitoba lens. So the question is, kids or no kids? Today in the podcast, we have quite a story for you. We are going to hear from a Manitoba woman who made that decision for herself, because you would think that that's what you're going to do. However, she went to the doctor and requested medical care around her decision, and the doctor questioned her decision and wouldn't go through with a procedure to help her make her choice happen. So we'll hear all about that. She says she was, quote, not allowed to get a tubal ligation, though her partner faced little barrier when he went to get a vasectomy. So super interesting interview coming up. But why don't we start with the stats that got us into this particular question on the podcast today? And for that, I'm going to take you to Japan first, because in Tokyo, they've rolled out a new policy. And this was just in 2025. And it's going to see some workers transition to a 4-day work week. But the government there says that the reason is because they want to address the country's plunging birth rates. Same problem we have in Canada. So they want to give employees more work-life balance. So they're looking at this through a fertility lens. Some experts, though, wonder if a similar move in Canada could help, which is, as I said, experiencing these low rates. So Shelley Clark is our guest on the podcast today. She's a demographer and she's a professor of sociology at McGill University. How intertwined are the economy and birth rates?
Well, that's a complicated question. I mean, they definitely are intertwined. Obviously, the more people that we have, the bigger our workforce potentially could be. But I would say that the connections are rather loose and complicated. And, if you take something like, changing fertility rates, right, those impacts on how many workers we have aren't going to be felt for 20, 25 years. And a whole variety of factors besides economics goes into making these fertility decisions, which you probably have heard during your series.
Yeah, we actually had a conversation that's kicked off a series looking at the reasons why Canadians aren't having as many children compared to the past. But can you go over a few of them as well, just to remind people about, what we understand?
Sure. So in addition to economics, just money, and also balancing and time constraints, so balancing work and life, people often talk about just simply differences in preferences and differences in lifestyle choices. So people are saying that they just want to have fewer children. Other people talk about how challenging it is to find the right partner, or that they don't have family living nearby to help them, or they're worried about the future and the future of the world. There's cost of housing. I mean, there's really many, many factors that go into people's decisions about fertility.
Because I mentioned Japan, I want to ask you about this. So will the 4-day work week in Tokyo, do you think, end up boosting the birth rate?
Well, I think we're all going to be eager to find the answer to that question. I myself am rather skeptical that it's going to have much of an effect. We've tried several different policies, and they've not had a huge effect. They certainly haven't reversed the trends in fertility. And this plan in particular, I think it possibly could have even some more unintended and negative consequences.
What other measures might be put in place to improve this?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we've tried things all across Canada, subsidized childcare, increasing parental leave, providing tax credits, and just in general, just more flexible work schedules or allowing people to work at home. All those things maybe cumulatively can have a little bit of an effect, but the truth is none of them have been the magic bullet. And I don't think we're likely to find a magic bullet. But I also think that, that might be okay. Certainly policies that can help people who want to have more children be able to have more children are useful. But we also could think about developing policies that simply adapt to the reality that we have lower fertility rates, and we're not going to have necessarily a population that's growing at the same size. So, there are many other policies that can be put in place in terms of focusing on investing in the children and the workers that we do have that could be more effective.
Does this work itself out? I mean, obviously, we're talking about policies and things that could improve the situation. And as you're saying, or maybe don't worry about it and look at current issues that are happening and accept what's happening, in terms of people's choices or however layered that is. But I guess what I'm wondering is whether or not this should be viewed as a problem, or does this sort of always go in waves?
Um, we really don't know. It's very hard to predict the future much in advance. Declining fertility has been the norm for most countries for most of our lifetimes. And there was originally this idea that, it's going to plateau out at about, 2.1 children. And we're seeing it's dipping below that. And the questions are, is it going to bounce back up? And I think it's almost impossible to actually predict that. And the demographers and others have been quite wrong in making those predictions in the future about what the changes are. But we do see a fair amount of variability in fertility. I mean, look at something like the baby boom, which again, not predicted by demographers, which was totally unexpected and substantially raised fertility for a while. So I think it is definitely possible that this is something that is going to increase sort of on its own in the next few decades.
That's Shelley Clark to set up our discussion today on the podcast. She's a demographer and a professor of sociology at McGill University. Well, let's get to this personal story now. I found this one quite surprising. It is about Melanie Zebrynski. Now, she's a Manitoba woman, and she says that she's never wanted kids. She asked her doctor for a tubal ligation for years, she said, but then she finally gave up. And we're going to hear why. Now, for those who, first of all, never heard of this before, this is a procedure where a woman's fallopian tubes are tied or blocked, which prevents pregnancy. So as you heard, she made her choice, but then effectively she was blocked from making her own healthcare decision. Here's my conversation with Melanie about what happened. So you asked your doctor about getting a tubal ligation first when? How old were you, and what was the conversation like?
The first time I asked, I was 22, and there really wasn't much of a conversation that time. It was kind of laughed off. He actually laughed and then moved on, like he thought I was joking. And then it took a few more times of asking to get different responses, all no, but just in different ways.
So laughed at you how? Laughed and said, no, you don't want this? Or laughed with no explanation, leaving you feeling, what did you feel like in that moment?
Yeah, it was kind of just a dismissive laugh. He didn't say anything. He just kind of chuckled to himself and then went on his way with what was next. And I don't know, I kind of figured maybe the first time it was a bit of a misunderstanding. He didn't really think I was serious or didn't understand what I had said.
So you asked again, I alluded to this. Is that right? For 5 years you kept asking?
Yeah, I kept trying until I was about 26, and then I kind of just gave up.
So what was the response along the way? Was there just continued laughter, or what were the conversations like as you kept asking then?
So it was always the basic point he always came to was, I don't know what I actually want. I was told I was too young and I will change my mind one day. I was told that I have to be at least 30 and already have kids. I was told, what about someday when your future husband wants kids? And that one hit me pretty hard.
Why?
It just felt because I was single at the time, and it felt like someone from my future, a man who I have never met before, still had more power over my body and my decisions than I did right then and there. And with my wants, if I was with somebody who did want kids, then they would not be my future husband.
Because you didn't want kids.
Yeah.
Were you able to, not that I'm putting this on you, but I'm curious, were you able to articulate any of this in those moments with the doctor?
Oh, no. No, I was still trying to understand how it was making me feel, and it was just also dismissive that it was it wouldn't matter if I said how I was feeling, my feelings weren't the point.
Yeah. You had obviously also a patient-doctor power imbalance there, and then you were saying this as a male doctor and you were a younger woman. So
Yes.
Who did you talk to about this after? Like, did you leave for all those years trying to have this conversation with your medical professional and not feel heard? I'm just curious. Did you then go back and get mad or try to express your feelings somewhere or try to make sense of this? Like,
it took me a while of sitting with it to fully understand the depth of what was happening. And I actually found support in like online groups on Facebook and talking with other women who have experienced the same things.
There are a lot of birth control options available to women. Why for you was tubal ligation the right choice for you versus, I guess, something like the pill or an IUD?
So with the pill, with anything hormonal, there are a lot of side effects for me personally, and I know for a lot of other people, that just it's not a feasible option. And with the IUD, there are other side effects as well. Like there's the hormonal one, same story. And there's the copper one, which it isn't hormonal, but it's also very painful to have inserted and removed. And there are a lot of testimonies of women who then experience like more pain during their cycle because of it.
So some concerns around the other things made your choice clearer for you.
Yeah.
Your fiancé actually was on the air as part of our series this week talking about getting a vasectomy. Now, I'm raising this because I wonder how you felt when you heard, he wasn't getting the same pushback that you've just described when he went to ask for that procedure.
At that point, it's been so long, and I've spoken with so many people. I wasn't surprised. I'm happy he was able to, because that just makes both of our lives better. But it's still just really sad, the difference in the imbalance in who's asking for what.
Were you treated any differently by other medical professionals along the way? Because obviously you asked this doctor to begin with over and over, and then you said just dropped it. Mm-hmm. But did you go somewhere else and have a different response ever, or maybe the same response?
No, I didn't get a new doctor until just a couple of years ago. Okay. And it wasn't long after that Daniel got his procedure done, so
it became a non-issue for you.
Yeah.
We did ask the province about women getting pushback from their healthcare provider when requesting a tubal ligation. So the province told us, quote, the physician would determine whether or not to perform the procedure based on their medical assessment, end quotes. What are your initial thoughts when you hear that against what happened to you?
I think that's very well and good on paper, but I don't think that's what happens. I think there's a lot of personal bias that comes into play as well. I mean, if that was just, and that's very open to interpretation as well.
Interpretation how?
Like based on the medical.
The term medical assessment.
Medical assessment, yeah. I feel like, I don't know, like what does that cover?
Would you have been open to like what part of the conversation went too far for you? It's pretty obvious in your case, being like, somebody laughed you out of the room and was saying, they're telling you what decision's best for you, really literally. But the conversation around the decision, would that have been something welcome to you?
If there was a benefit to it, yes.
But this obviously had no benefit.
Yeah.
What would you say to someone who is listening that may be considering or wants to get a tubal ligation, but is, or wants to get one rather, but is right now facing pushback from medical professionals? I wonder.
Be stubborn. Be the most stubborn you've been in your life, and look for other resources as well. Ask different people. There's now actually a list on Reddit of doctors who are willing to help people. So that's a great resource as well. Yeah, just be the best advocate you can be for yourself.
What a story that was. Melanie Zebrynski is 32 years old. She lives here in Winnipeg. Now, CBC reached out to the province to ask why women appear to have more difficulty getting a tubal ligation than men face when getting a vasectomy. And they replied with a short email. Here's what it said, quote from a spokesperson. Tubal ligation is an insured service through Manitoba Health Benefits. The physician would determine whether or not to perform the procedure based on their medical assessment, end quote. So no more information than that. Thanks for being with us today on This is Manitoba, and for checking us out. Don't forget to like, follow, and share.